So here I want to introduce you to the rigid handcuff. There's multiple different kinds of handcuffs out there in use, but this is the rigid handcuff, which you might see with a lot of police and prison staff using. Now, the use of handcuffs is a use of force, so any member of staff who uses the handcuffs are likely then to be required to submit a use of force reporting form, and that then might be disclosable in relation to any cases. The use of the handcuffs is always a tactical option for a person who's authorised to use them, and that's subject to the national decision making model, so taking into consideration the intelligence, the information and the threat and risk, and then also thinking about risks to themselves, to others, to the person themselves, because you need to not put the detainee at additional risk by the application of the cuffs unless the risk of not putting them at risk outweighs that risk. You need to consider injuries, existing injuries, which the person might have as well, which might reduce the requirement to need the handcuffs. But I just want to show you some little parts in relation to this. Now, if you've not seen these before, they're called the rigid cuffs because they've got the rigid bar there. And the predecessor of these were the chain links. So you'd have your two bracelet ends and just the chain running between them. But this is the rigid cuff. Thinking about these, they need to be kept in good working order, so there's basic maintenance to occur, and also each set of handcuffs has a serial number indentation. So again, that's required in relation to the paperwork aspects. A person who's handcuffed needs to be constantly monitored, so you're looking there at your level 3 and level 4 observations, certainly for the police point of view. Guidance is produced by the College of Police Authorised Professional Practice, and also ACPO, which is the Association of Chief Police Officers. Don't handcuff a detainee to yourself if you're an officer or the member of staff. Don't handcuff a detainee to a fixed object or a vehicle, and don't handcuff a detainee to another detainee. The handcuffs, subject to available time, etc., will be kept in a ready position before use. Now we have a single bar and a double bar, if you can see that. There's your double bar, there's the single bar. And the idea with this is the single bar would go against the wrist, the cuff then comes round and completes the circle. So ready position, the cuff is pushed through and then pushed back just slightly so that it's secure enough, but there's not that much pressure that needs to then happen when the person puts the cuff onto the wrist and it's pushed through to then make a bracelet around the actual wrist. Now, once the handcuff is in situation and the person, then the officer, conducts their checks to make sure that they're not too tight, they're not too loose, they're sighted in the correct place, which is between the wrist and the notch there, so it's right in this wrist bit. If it's too loose, it can come up over the wrist and cause injuries, and if it's too tight, it can affect the hand because it can damage nerves and it can influence blood flow as well. But once this comes round and it's placed, the officer then needs to lock the cuff to prevent it from tightening any further. And how this happens, the officer will have a key. So this is your basic small key, but there's versions which are longer, but they all have this pointy end. And what happens with that is there's a little hole by the handcuff. The officer then, with the pointy end, sticks that in and it's now locked the cuff, and that now cannot tighten. It can't move, that one. Okay, so the bottom one here can still move because that hasn't been locked, but this top one can't now move. So that prevents it tightening on the person. And then to get them off, the key goes into the keyhole and that then will be released and then it can come off. So that is the basic application of a handcuff. Now we do get involved in relation to cases looking at the use of force, whether the officer had other tactical options or not, whether injuries were caused because of the handcuffs, whether the use of the handcuffs prevented other injuries occurring. We also provide the physical training of the handcuffs and also online CPD training in relation to the theory of handcuffs. So that was just a little introduction for you to have a look at a rigid handcuff if you've not seen one before.